roll down Main Street.
I think I was last out at 7:30 this morning.
It was not beautiful out at 7:30.
It was a little chilly.
It's 5:30, so we'll call to order this meeting for Monday, October 18th. Karl, would you start us off with a roll call, please?
Councilmember Ronayne.
Present.
Remley.
Present.
Lunsman.
Present.
Reif.
Present.
Johnson. Reinbold.
Present.
Langer.
Present.
Rux.
Present.
Mayor Schoeneman.
Present. Please stand with me for the Pledge of Allegiance. First order of business will be to approve this week's agenda. I'm unaware of any changes to be made. If no one has any changes, I would take a motion to approve the agenda as printed.
Move to approve. Second.
Got a motion from Councilman Lunsman, a second from Councilman Remley. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And opposed, nay. Ayes have it. The motion is carried. We will move along to our approval of the minutes for the last meeting, which took place on October 4th of this year. Can I get a motion to approve those minutes?
Move to approve.
Second.
Got a motion from Councilman Reinbold and a second from Councilman Lunsman. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And opposed, nay. Motion does carry. I saw no one has signed up to speak in our open forum here today, so we'll move along to our consent calendar where we have four items of city business, including a proclamation. Can I get a motion to approve our consent calendar as printed?
So moved.
Second.
Got a motion from Councilman Rux and a second from Councilman Reinbold. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And opposed, nay. Motion does carry. Move right along to our new business where we have the possible approval of Resolution 21-1001R to establish a consolidated board of equalization pursuant to SDCL 101166, as well as to designate the member and alternate member to the City Council to serve on that board of equalization from the period of April through May of 2022. I don't think that there's anything special about what we're doing here. It's an annual thing, Ron, but why don't you tell us a little bit about it?
That is correct, Mr. Mayor. This is part of the consolidated board, which includes the County Board of Equalization, the City of Aberdeen, and our school district, and the relevant township that would be involved in a particular appeal. I think traditionally the mayor has been appointed, but there's no reason that the mayor would have to be the appointed member of the consolidated board.
I can tell you it's been a very meaningful experience in my life in the last 2 years. And there has been a fair amount of complaints, which I was able to at least listen to. And generally sided with the county's assessments on most of those things, but there have been some good grievances to listen to. Clint, I think that you were an alternate last year. Does anyone care to serve on that board this year? I'm happy to continue to do it, but if someone were to fight me for
Are
it.
you so happy?
You know, we zoomed in. It went pretty briskly.
I know last year I was an alternate and I couldn't make it to one of them because I was out of town. So
Glenn, did you attend most of them? I didn't.
No.
Okay.
no, I didn't.
Yeah.
He wanted to be there though.
He would have
Yeah.
in spirit. All right. Well, like I said, I'll be happy to serve again for the course of a year. Does someone wish to stand in as my alternate?
I'll do it again.
Sounds good.
Take one for the team.
Yeah.
So if that would be noted.
I'll move that resolution.
Second.
A motion from Councilman Ronayne and a second from Councilman Reinbold to appoint myself, the mayor, for the Equalization Board, serving the next year, and the alternate being Councilman Rux. Since this is a resolution, I'm gonna have you go ahead and give me a roll call vote if anyone else has anything to say first. Otherwise, Karl, would you give us a roll call vote on that one?
Councilmember Ronayne,
Aye.
Remley,
Aye.
Lunsman,
Aye.
Reif,
Aye.
Reinbold,
Aye.
Langer,
Aye.
Rux,
Aye.
Mayor Shonneman.
Aye, motion does carry. Thank you guys all very much. Next, we'll move on to the second order of business, which is the possible approval of the resolution 21-1003R, which creates a tax increment financing district labeled number 33, which speaks to the Citizens Building TIF, to repurpose and rehabilitate the Citizens Building downtown Aberdeen. And Joe is going to tell us a little bit about where we stand on that one.
Yeah, I'll start off the discussions on this. We have two TIFs in front of us tonight, and both of them are non-infrastructure TIFs. And if you look back really over about the last 10 years, the number of TIF districts the city has had has more than doubled. And if you think about it, a lot of housing has occurred in that time. And so most of the TIFs that this group has approved have been related to infrastructure, related to new housing units, mostly streets and underground infrastructure for subdivisions. And I think we would say that's been very successful. There have also been a few but very few non-infrastructure TIFs, mostly historic preservation. And that's what this 33 is proposing to do. This is the Citizens Building. We're all aware of this building. It's a pretty sizable building in the downtown district, and it definitely needs attention. And it's not something that a weekend house flipper can go in and do. It's a very large project, and the group that's proposing this has experience in these types of projects. But the tough part with these is we're providing TIF really for the asset, to renovate the asset. And so you really have to ask yourself as a group, is this an asset we want to preserve? And the staff has worked with the development crew on this, and we believe it is a good investment to make. If this doesn't happen now, we may have a parking lot on the corner of Main before long, and we don't want that. It is related to housing. We know we have a housing shortage. We know we have a downtown renovation going on. We're trying to revitalize that. Folks like these types of apartments downtown. This will bring some demographic to that. So staff highly recommends this. The development agreement that the city attorney drafted is a little bit different, because one thing we wanted to think about is that because there isn't infrastructure involved, maybe we need to look at this differently. So you see in front of you the agreement. It's been negotiated and signed, and staff recommends approval of that agreement, their plan as submitted, and the resolution.
Thank you very much. Joe? I'd like to add that, one of the concerns that we sometimes get on these TIFs is, the public funding something that winds up potentially being flipped for a short-term financial gain. So I want to applaud those guys for taking part in negotiating something that would kind of ensure that would not be the case. It ensures that they'll not be able to sell the property for a 5-year period after they renovate it, which I think was probably addresses the number one public concern that I've received on these kind of unconventional TIF projects. So thank you guys, and I would strongly support this one as well as written. Does anyone else have anything on this? On that case, I would take a motion to approve the TIF.
So moved.
Second.
Got a motion from Councilwoman Langer, and it was that
Mark.
second from Councilman Remley, and Councilman Ronayne had something to add.
Thank you. Since nobody wanted to talk, I thought I would start. I think this is a great project. I'd love to see it done, but there's just no way I can support this TIF. If I read the proposal properly, the projections are that there would be about $15 million generated as a result of this TIF. The majority of that, the vast majority of that, comes from properties other than this building. It is essentially relying on the increase in taxation that is going to occur on other properties downtown to fund this. Those are monies that this city government could use to improve roads, to be involved in other projects, and instead we are projected or proposed to pay this over to a private company to help them fund this project. And again, it's a great project, but in my view, this is corporate welfare, and I can't support the transfer of city funds to a private company, even for as worthwhile a project as this.
Thank you, Councilman Ronayne. Anyone else have any? Councilwoman Langer.
Councilman Ronayne and I have different opinions on this, but I respect yours as well. I just think it's really important to acknowledge that the TIF program in general, if you really cycle through who it all affects and how the funding works, I mean, technically it does go to private businesses at some point. And this piece is so historical, and I took the opportunity to look at the property, and I genuinely believe if we don't do something with it in 3 to 5 years, it will be gone. The water damage that was done is horrendous. The windows weren't put in correctly. It's just an absolute travesty, and it's not good if we lose that building. So I do think that this huge project that's being taken on, whether it's private or public, will add a huge economic impact to downtown between businesses. It's going to bring retail businesses and 40 new apartments. And again, taking a building that is one of the oldest and rumored to be tallest until the Dakota Bank Stadium was built, keep it intact and have it useful versus sitting there being decrepit. So I will absolutely be supporting this. I think it's a great thing for the city, and I think it's exactly why the TIFs, in my opinion, or portrayal of them, exist, right? So.
Councilman Rutz.
You know, and when I first heard of this project, I had reservations too, no different. But if you look at the vast majority of our TIFs, I think when I first got on the council, we were on TIF number 4. A vast majority of them, when you take out the happy ones, have maybe benefited private individuals or corporations and that type of stuff. But we always had a goal in mind, you know, whether it is to fund the public infrastructure or save a historic building, no different than like when we did it for the Roosevelt building or the depot on South Main. You know, there has to be an overwhelming purpose. And I think this has a purpose of, you either save the building and, you know, who's going to take a jump and put in, you know, $5 million to maybe not get a return, or the return just isn't there. Or you again, you know, this building is at no different than what the city hall was, you know, several years ago. You either fix it up or you plan to tear it down and start over. I'm going to support this. Like I say, I have your comments. You know, I still have comments that are issues with, you know, the size of the TIF district, because we do have, I would love to do another TIF district downtown to help fund more second floor housing and those types of issues that work for an ultimate goal of not only helping downtown, but increasing our housing stock. And this would affect that. But I think that there are ways we can get around that later on, either through an overlay district or something of that nature, where we can still capture the increment of the rest of downtown. But like I say, we need to save a building. If not, that changes our skyline, or could. And I don't think people would complain us trying to save a historic building and having 40 units downtown, which will help drive businesses and other things that we need desperately downtown to fill the empty spaces. So I'm in support for this, but like I say, I appreciate your views are some of mine, but I'm looking at you know, what I think would benefit long-term downtown Aberdeen, and hopefully this is just a small amount to what could be a great thing.
Thank you, Councilman Rux. And I do think that it kind of bears saying that, I mean, this probably more closely fits the initial intention of a TIF prior to these infrastructure TIFs that we kind of got off on. Mm-hmm. The first TIF in this community was for the Lakewood Mall, and that probably more closely matched the way that this one is structured than the others.
Well, and if we end up doing
But anyone else have anything to share?
I love the idea of preserving an old building. There's no doubt. The biggest question in my mind, and I take Rob's opinion to heart because it has a lot of validity, but I look at that building, can we replace that building today? We absolutely could not do it in any way, shape, or form. Could we wait another 3 to 5 years before we have to tear it down, then leave it blank for some developer to decide to build something different? But will it be as grand as that building ever was or could be to this day? So in my opinion, I respect your opinion very greatly, but I'm going to support this because I don't think we can replace that building with anything built today without using those bones. So that's why I'm going to support this.
Yeah, I think it'll be important that it does draw that housing stock to the downtown area, which has been a real desire and need of ours as a city. Tiffany, have you got something?
Yeah, just one more thing. Oh, sorry. I just want to clarify too, like, and I agree completely. And we've talked about doing some type of TIF to support development of housing downtown because we need it. But again, it all funnels, whether we give it to the downtown association to do it or however we do it, it all funnels to the private individual business. So, you know, just like when we did the facade grants, or, I mean, it benefits private business in some way. So I don't think, I hear it, but I don't think it's an end result regardless of TIFs.
Right. Another thing that I was kind of impressed with, I guess, in the process of meeting with the developers was, you know, we are putting a pretty substantial amount of money in, but so are they, and it's to a much higher magnitude than ours. So at the end of the day, the investment that's coming to the downtown area will be great, and I think it's going to pay some real dividends, like the rest of you were saying. Anyone else have anything before we take a vote on this?
Could I just clarify one comment?
Go ahead.
You know, I don't want the council to misunderstand me. I understand that this always benefits a private developer. I get that. But I've never voted in favor of one of these that relied 98% on other properties to pay the increment. I mean, we are essentially taking all of the tax from far more properties to fund this, and that's what I find to be so unusual and such a diversion from what we have done in the past.
The depot, another project from these developers, did you vote?
But that was an
against
adjacent property that was owned by the same folks, and as I recall, and was it not owned by the same folks, Tom? Yeah, and so that was how we differentiated that.
No, it wasn't owned by the same people.
Wasn't it? It was an adjacent property, though. That was one adjacent property.
So we have done something like this before, and it was for the Roosevelt building, which had no value because it was city property when we took it over. We only sold it for $1. And we did a TIF district that did something similar to this. We even went and captured part of Avira, you know, and that to make it work. Because again, the overall goal was that building at the time was you either do something with it or you tear it down. And we felt that there was much more value in trying to repurpose it into housing and that type of stuff, where we did a TIF district similar to what they're doing. A lot of buildings, a lot of houses, and even part of Avira were captured for it to make that TIF work, to save that structure. So we have done it once before in the past.
That may have been before my time. But
It was. Oh, yeah.
Before it slips my mind, I would like to mention that we're going to have an amendment. There was a
I'm sorry.
typographical issue
Yep.
in our.
I should have warned Joe about this, but I made a mistake in the resolution. I did not include the date of the development agreement that's referenced in paragraph 3D of the resolution. That would be October 13th, so I would ask for an amendment to insert October 13th into that resolution.
Second.
Got a motion from Councilman Ronayne and a second from Councilman Rux to indicate the date October 13th in the development agreement, or referring to the development agreement
Resolution paragraph 3D.
in the resolution, paragraph 3D. Got a motion, Ronayne, second, Councilman Rux. All in favor of that, please say aye.
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 And opposed, nay. Consider that language amended. Anyone else have anything on the TIF district itself, the big vote? On that note, Karl, would you give us a roll call vote then, please?
Councilmember Rux,
Aye.
Langer,
Aye.
Reinbold,
Aye.
Reif,
Aye.
Lunsman,
Aye.
Remley,
Aye.
Ronayne,
No.
Mayor Shoneman.
Aye. Motion does carry. Move along to our possible approval of Resolution 2110-04R, creating the tax district, our increment financing district number 34, which is referred to as the Lee Park Storage TIF, to fund improvements, engineering, finance costs necessary to develop the land and construct a cold storage unit complex. And here to talk to us about that is our own city manager, Joe Gaa.
Yes, this is a very similar thing as far as its no infrastructure. Staff did not recommend approval of this in planning and zoning, and as you've read the sheets prepared by the city attorney, we're not recommending it here either, purely because of the end use, being storage units. These things get beat up in the public eye pretty easy as far as TIFs, and we want to make sure we're being responsible. We understand this land hasn't been used for anything else and probably has some limited usages. But from a staff standpoint, we just had some trouble with that. We still, you have all the documentation in there, and I don't know, city attorney has anything to add on this one?
All I would add is that if the council is inclined to approve a TIF, then we would need to discuss some of the language for that resolution. I have, as you'll note, the resolution for this is similar to what we just approved a moment ago, but it also has blanks for the term of the district and what we're calling the hold period for the asset. And that is, there are some blank lines in paragraph 3A and 3C. And again, I would note that the development agreement in 3D should be October 13th, so I made that mistake in both documents. But I would just ask that if the council is inclined to move forward with approving this TIF, then we should also then discuss the term of the TIF, which typically have been 20 years. It's not required that it be 20 years, and that I think administration will recommend a shorter period of time, and then also that the asset be held for at least the period of the term of the TIF. So that's all I would add.
With that, I would take a motion on this.
I'll move it.
Motion, Councilman Ronayne, second.
What are we moving, to approve or deny?
To approve.
I'll second for a sense of argument, I guess.
I've got a motion. Ronayne, second. Remley. So on goes the discussion. What have we got from the council itself? First of all, I guess let's, why don't we take a motion to amend really quick and add that date? Is that the only amendment
Would add the date
component?
in the resolution, and then of course the council would need to discuss and add into the resolution the term of the district, which would be in 3A, and that number would be the same for both blanks. And then for 3C, if you want to have a hold period where the asset has to be held during a period of time, and our staff would recommend that be the same as the term of the district, which cannot be more than 20 years.
I'll move the amendment.
Second.
So-
Well, I'll move, pardon me, were you asking, Mayor, for just an amendment as to the date, or were you asking?
I was at first, but then Ron had suggested that other information. Why don't we do an amendment on the date, and then we'll have a discussion about those values.
Yeah, and
So-
I'm moving to amend the date.
Got a motion, Councilman Ronayne, second, Councilman Reinbold, to add the date October 13th as far as the development agreement is concerned to the
Paragraph 3D.
paragraph 3D. And with that, I would, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And opposed, nay. That amendment is in place. Now let's talk about the term of the TIF, if anyone is interested in doing that. Rod, what have you got?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I at least want to give some, background to this. I understand that this is maybe not what the council has looked at exactly in the past, but the statute does make clear that TIFs can be used for general economic development purposes. And so I wanted to give you a quick story about how we got to this point. So you're right that this is for storage units, but it's in my mind, in our mind, it's a two-part project. North of Village Bowl, between Village Bowl and the old Elks, is where this TIF is proposed. But this contract, this land I have under contract, includes all the land west of Village Bowl, which fronts Highway 281. And I wondered one day, why has this never been developed? It's highway frontage, it's got access. And so we hired soil borings. And what you'll find out is that over the last decades, I don't know how many years exactly, that land has been filled to the tune of, in some spots, it's 8.5 or 9 feet of fill. And when you get your soil engineer to tell you that you can't build anything on 8 or 9 feet of fill, you have to remove all that and then replace it with engineered fill in order to build apartment complex or a hotel or something else. So that's why this land has sat vacant for all of these years. And so in my mind, the idea behind this complex is to, and by the way, the area between the Village Bowl and the Elks where the storage units are going to go also has fill, but it's not as extensive. It's 2.5 to 3 feet of fill, and we can work around that, hopefully with the assistance of this TIF. But I believe this falls within an area that the council should consider as valuable to Aberdeen, which is economic development of what I'm going to call a blighted land area by virtue of how it came to exist. If you look north of there and west of the Elks, we know there's a giant slough there. And I'm sure, but for the filling that's happened over all these years, it would be a slough west of the Village Bowl as well. But back when the wetland laws were different, this filling of the land was allowed. And here we have today a nice geographically located piece of land, but a land that unfortunately is unbuildable and won't be buildable without significant investments in that land. I mean, our dirt bill just to build the storage units is going to be almost $200,000 of a $1.2 million project just for dirt work. So you can imagine west of the Village Bowl how much that's going to be to remove 4 times that amount of fill over a bigger area. So what I'm asking the council to consider is that what we're really trying to do is create a storage unit project that will help us pay for the future development of that area west of Village Bowl. And yes, it may not be what Joe and the mayor have called as an infrastructure TIF, but nonetheless, it is within the statutes under South Dakota law, and other communities have used this. And I would argue that there have been other projects. I think somebody referenced the Rogers Hotel across the street, which is a TIF that I worked on. So there are other evidences within the community of projects that have not been about housing or have not been about we're building a new sewer line. But this is a project that will benefit Aberdeen in the long run because it's going to allow the use of a piece of ground that's not going to get used. And it hasn't been developed for decades because of the condition of the land. So while it may be novel in how it has not come before you before, I would like to encourage you to at least use the tool here. This TIF is obviously much smaller than TIF 33, but nonetheless, percentage-wise, it's going to be important to have this component to allow us to look at the next phase of the development, which will be that area west of Village Bowl. So I would ask that you I would ask that you consider to give the TIF the full length of time that all the other TIFs in Aberdeen have been given, which is 20 years. That's what's under the statute. Like most other TIFs, it most likely will pay off sooner. I think if you look at the history of TIFs in Aberdeen, they generally do that. To address Councilmember Ronane's concerns, this TIF only affects the land, the subject land. It does not take a larger area. It's only for this land itself. So it doesn't affect anybody else doing a TIF around if the owner of the Elks wanted to do something, or even if the owner of the Village Bowl wanted to do something. So I think for these reasons, it does have a beneficial interest. I would also ask that the limitations of the transfer, I don't intend to transfer, but I think by putting a restriction for the length of the TIF of the term, you take away any flexibility that a developer may have to sell the project down the road and use that money then to fund a bigger project along the 281, should that opportunity present itself. This is something Aberdeen has not done before. It's something that I think if Aberdeen wanted to do before, that at the beginning of the TIF process, if the people proposing TIFs were aware of how Aberdeen wanted to either reduce the length of time of TIFs or change the ownership of the TIFs, that's something as a developer you could work around. but this came to light very late in this TIF. Matter of fact, probably this month. So it's very hard as a developer to work around those rules when they change at that late in the game to try and address and maybe develop the project differently in light of that. But that's the background of what this TIF is for and what it's going to be used to do. I don't have any plans on selling this development. I plan on using, hopefully, the revenues to provide income to develop the property west of us, and that's kind of, I've been in Aberdeen my whole life, and that's kind of what we're hoping to do. So I would ask that you give us the TIF for 20 years, put the same restriction you did on 33, a 5-year no sale agreement. I'm fine with that. I have no desire to do anything in that amount of time. If you could treat these two consistently, I would appreciate it. And I will tell you, you're going to be happy with how it turns out in the end. So thank you very much. Any questions?
So, Councilman Ronay.
Go ahead, Mayor, you have.
I was going to ask, so your intent, like, the reason why you brought up the land in the first place that's to the west of the Village Bowl has nothing to do with this TIF?
It doesn't, it's not part of the TIF, Mayor, no.
Do you currently own that property?
It's under contract along with this piece of ground.
But that's going to be substantially more money than what you're talking about here. It sounded like, explain to me how this paves the way for that.
This paves the way because I didn't include that west lot in this TIF. So down the road, if we want to do a housing development, if we want to do a motel, if we want to do a bigger project, I mean, it's a big piece of land. It's probably 4 or 5 acres of land. I don't know exactly what's going to be the right fit for Aberdeen down the road in 5 or 6 or 7 years. But by keeping it separate, it keeps flexibility. Maybe we're going to have additional owners as part of the group that will help develop that land, because that may be similar to TIF 33. That could be a $10 million project pretty easily, as opposed to this, which is a $1.2 million or $1.4 million project.
So we've done in the past neighborhoods, a few historic buildings, and a few monstrous new commercial retail construction projects. Is there a limit that you'd put? Like what doesn't belong in the TIF conversation in your mind of storage sheds?
I think it's a really excellent question, and I trust you folks to look at what the statutes allow. And I think the statutes allow general economic development. And in this case, I think the definition of blighted really applies here, given how this land was filled over time. And I think if you look at the long-term prospects for the land, I find it really difficult, knowing what I know about development and helping others get TIFs, I find it really difficult for that west piece of ground to get developed on its own merits, given the amount of infrastructure work you're going to have to do to get that land buildable. Now, I'm not saying somebody won't, but I will say it's been sitting there for 30 plus years without.
Sure. No, and I like that. And I think, you had mentioned a apartment complex or a motel and those type of things, but that's not what we're talking about here.
Nope, we're not.
We're talking about a storage shed. Councilman Ronay, what have you got?
Well, I'm just curious, Rod, if the TIF is not approved, will this project be built nonetheless?
The contract is written so that the contract does not have to be closed on if we don't get the TIF. So I will tell you that we'd have to reevaluate our position and see what we could do. I know the project will not get built as we would like to build it to generate the number of square foot of space and storage units. So whether it can get built on a smaller scale, maybe. I won't commit to that right now. But I will tell you the contract is written so we do not have to close on the deal without the TIF.
So if we postpone this for a few weeks, will he give us the answer?
No, because then I'm going to lose my increment on November 1st.
Okay.
So timing was critical on this.
Okay. Councilwoman Ronay, or Langer, sorry.
It's okay. Easy to confuse the names.
Yeah, no.
It's the dark.
I'm on one today. I'm just curious because obviously this correlates to your future plans, but there's no guarantee that the future plans will happen.
You are absolutely correct.
So it's just a gamble.
It is an I guess we like to use these terms investments, right? So
I'm
asking the city to invest $200,000 in some land that's pretty tough to build on, in hopes that we're going to give us the opportunity, because we're either going to own all of it or none of it as far as the land around the Village Bowl. And I will tell you right now, because of how the land is owned, it generates $500 in tax every year because it's ancillary ground to the Village Bowl. If you allow this, it's going to generate $22,000 a year in tax. That's in the project plan, so you can see that. So it is going to benefit the city down the road, even if just this piece gets built. But that's not the reason. Again, you're right. There's no guarantee. We're not signing a contract that says I'm going to do something else on the other ground, because there's a lot of unknowns on the other ground still. But that is, I'm laying out for you what our hope is, what our plan is. Yep.
So and I'm obviously not somebody who writes these up. Is there a contingency possibility in something like that? Or is that not even something that, I just know that there was negotiations in the other one, so I didn't know if that's like, because I like the potential of what's to come. I don't like necessarily the TIF for the storage units if that's all we get.
Yep.
But I just didn't know if there's, no, okay. There's all these weird things that we can do.
Councilman Rux.
You know, if you would have brought a TIF where, hey, we need to get this land developable, the whole land, you know, we need to bring in fill, we need to get all that other stuff taken care of, so this land now is commercially available, I could support that much better than saying, hey, we're just going to do storage units and it's a crapshoot on the rest. I mean, like I say, because I get that, you know, it's terrible to look at. It's at one of the entrances of the city. But, you know, with just the storage units, I just don't see, while you can sit there and say it, to me, it's like it's not a long-term potential. But if you would have sat there and said, we need to get all this land to where we can commercially develop, it's going to take a lot of fill. It's going to take a lot of removing dirt, but we can do it. That was something I would have tipped.
So I respect that, but we're going to then run into the problem that Councilman Romaine brought up on the previous TIF, which is there's no way that the project in of itself is going to support the amount of infrastructure that has to be done. And I'm using that term loosely, but the amount of dirt work that's going to have to be done to build a structure on that footprint. So are you going to then TIF the housing development, Rolling Hills Golf Course? Are you going to TIF the Rhyme Coda? Are you going to TIF, I mean, what are you going to do to try and generate enough increment to pay for that? It's very similar in respect to TIF 33 in the standpoint that the project TIF 33 itself cannot generate enough increment to make a developer spend $10 million on what that project is going to cost. So by taking a bigger footprint and generating a $3 million increment, now you make it so the developer can take a risk of $6 or $7 million of his own money because he's got $3 million of increment to rely upon. And that's exactly what TIF 34 would have to end up because of how much money would be spent on just getting the land buildable. That's the explanation.
And that is something no different than TIF 33. We looked at what is the ultimate goal of that project. And like I say, we approved a bigger TIF district, no different than the Roosevelt, no different than the St. Louis Depot. Other projects were able to form on their own because, you know, it's empty ground. But when there were cost prohibitive things, we have looked at what the whole project is as a total and like, hey, you know, this could be good for an apartment. This could be good for a hotel. We just need the lots, the roads, the infrastructure. It's no different than what any other community does. Like I say, it's a difficult piece of land and it takes some solid engineering to do it. But like I say, I'm not opposed to what we get to it. It's what is in the end that benefits the city. And I don't see where just the storage sheds are at this point.
Well, I understand that, Councilman Rux. You know, we had the same discussion with Planning Commission, and Planning Commission unanimously approved this project for the reasons I guess I laid out for the council, and I understand that you don't have to follow the recommendation, and I respect that authority that you have. But I think long term, this is a benefit for the Aberdeen community. This, as you said, is an entrance. It's a very populated streetway, accessway. It's at the intersection of a couple of major avenues in town. So I can't make any guarantees, but I can tell you that it's part of a bigger plan. And I guess that's what I can commit to you right now.
Yeah. And like I say, the TIF isn't about the bigger plan. I'm in on the bigger plan.
Well, this TIF is necessary for the bigger plan.
It's that bigger plan that scares me, though. I mean, that's always been a slew. I mean, ever since I can remember, or filled now, you know, that's going to take a lot.
Yeah, we spent $10,000 on soil borings and have a soils engineer analysis on how to make it work. And you're right, it is going to take a lot, but it's not going to, on its own, you know, it's going to be very difficult to, and that's probably part of the other reason for delay, Clint, is what is the right fit there? What can we make the appropriate use of? What is going to work both for the community and for the developer to invest, again, a lot more of their own money to try and take the risk that, is it an apartment building? Is it a motel? Is it something else? And it is going to take some analysis, and you're right, with the given the soils, it's possible. Anything's possible as far as building. You just need to throw enough money at it to make it happen. And I'm hopeful that this project, the storage units, will be a catalyst to allow us to get there, to spend more money on design and development and looking at the options. But without something to generate some revenue, it's just not possible at this point.
Thank you very much, Rod.
Sorry.
Anyone else have anything? Councilman Remley, what have you got?
I just like the idea myself. I mean, it's that area out there has always been blighted, in my opinion. It's an eyesore as people come into town, and if something can be done, let's do it. So,
Appreciate that.
Just
Thank
my
you.
opinion.
Thank you very much. Anyone else on the council? All right, then.
I have something quick, Mayor. Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead, Councilman Reif.
Yeah, I would say this is to me, this is an issue of precedence. So if somebody else comes to us down the road and says, I'd like to develop downtown for additional housing, well, to me, that's a worthy cause for a TIF. If a developer comes to us down the road and says, I want to build a storage unit, no matter where that is, and it could be a similar type lot, to me, it puts us in a bad situation at that point to have to use a TIF for something that, in my mind, doesn't fit the usefulness of a TIF, which to me would be, as we talked about, retail, additional housing, things of that nature. So I will not be supporting this.
Thank you, Councilman Reif. Anyone else from the council? Rod, I appreciate your time here today.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity, Mr. Mayor.
Sure. It's always good to hear you speak, and I think that no matter what happens here tonight, I think we all like you. I think we appreciate what you're doing around here in town, and I agree. I think that there's an awful precedent that we're potentially going to have a bunch of car washes in here looking for TIFs, and who knows where the end of it, animal veterinary clinics, and who knows, but all kinds of private businesses will feel like they're more worthwhile than a public storage shed or a private storage shed. Karl, would you give us a roll call vote, please?
Councilmember Ronayne.
Aye.
Remley.
Aye.
Lunsman.
No.
Reif.
No.
Reinbold.
No.
Langer.
No.
Rux.
No.
Mayor Schoeneman.
No. Measure does fail. We'll move along to our public hearing and possible approval on the transfer of retail on-off liquor license with video lottery from Ron Erickson to Airport Fuel LLC at 4707 West Highway 12, and transfers a package on-off sale liquor license and retail on-sale malt beverage and South Dakota wine license from Erickson and Meyer Incorporated to the Airport Fuel LLC at East Highway 12. Any discussion on this matter? First, I guess I'll start with a motion.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion, Councilman Remley. Second, Councilman Reinbold. Anyone got anything on this? Karl, would you give us a roll call vote, please?
Councilmember Rux.
Aye.
Langer.
Aye.
Reinbold.
Aye.
Reif.
Aye.
Lunsman. Remley.
Aye.
Ronayne.
Aye.
Mayor Schoeneman.
Aye, motion does carry. Next, with the possible approval of payment number 1 in the amount of $131,438.82 to CWF Masonry and Construction Incorporated for work on the street maintenance concrete repair 2 project. Can I get a motion to make that payment?
Move approval.
Second.
Got a motion from Councilman Ruck, second Councilman Ronayne. Karl, roll call vote.
Councilmember Ronayne.
Aye.
Remley.
Aye.
Lunsman.
Aye.
Reif.
Aye.
Reinbold.
Aye.
Langer.
Aye.
Rux.
Aye.
Mayor Schoeneman.
Aye, motion does carry. Next, with the possible approval of change order number 2 in the amount of $59,992 and payment number 4 for $54,466.33 to Reedy Construction for work on the North Dakota Street construction project. Usually I kick these things over to Robin. The first one is pretty self-explanatory. Robin, tell us about this change order, would you?
The change order is primarily due to the need to tie the properties back in at sidewalk safely. A lot of these properties, we can just dig back in and slope them back into the sidewalk. Some of these are a little too steep, and we're not comfortable with the look when we're done or how they would be maintainable by the property owner. So some of these are a after the fact evaluation by us as we go through and try to decide how we would want it to look if it were our own property. So that's the explanation. This is primarily for modular retaining wall, and we recommend approval.
And this was essentially a budgeted expense, you guys, and not
It's
really,
within budget. It just was not part of the original contract.
not a surprise amount or anything like that.
No.
I'll move to approve.
Second.
Got a motion from Councilman Renane, second from Councilman Lunsman. Carl, would you give us a roll call vote on that payment and change order payment?
Councilmember Rux,
Aye.
Langer,
Aye.
Reinbold,
Aye.
Reif,
Aye.
Lunsman,
Aye.
Remley,
Aye.
Ronayne,
Aye.
Mayor Shonneman.
Aye, motion is carried. Next, we have the possible approval and change order number one, the amount of negative $1,374.07, and payment number one in the amount of $538,625.93 to B&B Contracting for work on the sheet pile dam repairs project. Robin?
Bob was online. This is actually out of his budget, but I'm glad to present on his department's behalf. We did do the design. The explanation behind the change order, we actually ended up doing shorter sheets as we were trying to drive the sheets. They did not drive as deep as what we had at the water treatment plant in last year's project. So we ended up shortening the sheets up, but we had to go further in order to tie it back into the adjacent ground. The whole point behind it is you hold the water behind the sheets, and if you don't tie it far enough, our survey showed we could be a little bit shorter. So it netted out to where we're actually saving a little money, but we actually were ending up with shorter sheets to do the work. So we recommend approval. It went very well, and the $538,000, the majority of that will be paid by FEMA funds from damage due to the 2019 spring flooding.
Move approval.
Second.
The motion, Councilman Rux, second, Councilman Reinbold. Any questions for Robin on this one? Or Carl, give us a roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Ronayne,
Aye.
Remley,
Aye.
Lunsman,
Aye.
Reif,
Aye.
Reinbold,
Aye.
Langer,
Aye.
Rux,
Aye.
Mayor Shonneman.
Aye, motion does carry. Next, we have the possible approval of payment requests for work on the AIP airport improvement projects and authorizes the city manager to sign the necessary documents. Payment number 23 for geometry to Helms for $52.55 and 55 cents. Payment number 5 for geometry to Sharp Enterprises for $49,834.22. Payment 10 for the GA apron design to Helms for $26.49 and 3 cents. And payment number 1 to Helms and Associates for the GA apron project for $27,258 and 1 cent. Lastly, payment 2SA for the geometry to Sharp Enterprises for the grand total amount of $339,848.15. And here to tell us about that is Airport Manager Rich Krokel.
Good evening. Yeah, we met at the airport board about a week and a half ago. Talked about the aforementioned payments. Payment 23 and payment 5 are for the original project. That was the $3.5 million project, which is very close to being completed. Payment number 10 and payment number 1 are for design and engineering on the supplemental portion, which we're calling phase 1 of the GA apron project. That was the $1.5 million project that we added on to the taxiway geometry corrections. And then payment number 5 is for Sharp's materials labor to date.
Move to approve.
Second.
Got a motion from Councilman Renane, second from Councilman Remley. Any questions for the airport manager or otherwise? Carl, give us a roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Rux,
Aye.
Langer,
Aye.
Reinbold,
Aye.
Reif,
Aye.
Lunsman,
Aye.
Remley,
Aye.
Ronayne,
Aye.
Mayor Shonneman.
Aye, motion does carry. Next, we got the review and approval of the claims. The bill list is for the week of October 18th, 2021. Can I get a motion to pay those bills, please?
Move to approve. Second.
Motion, Councilman Lensman, second, Councilman Remley. Karl, would you give us a roll call vote, please?
Councilmember Ronayne.
Aye.
Remley.
Aye.
Lunsman.
Aye.
Reif.
Aye.
Reinbold.
Aye.
Langer.
Aye.
Rux.
Aye.
Mayor Shoneman.
Aye, motion does carry. Next, we got the city manager's report with Joe Gaa.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I have just one thing, kind of a little follow-up. I provided you some information, and it's been in the media. If you remember, a couple of months ago, we made a proposal. It was myself, Aberdeen Development, and the Chamber for some funds towards an application that would help recruit outside workforce, outside meaning outside the state of South Dakota. It was a program through the GOED. The applicant had to be the local development authority. So our development corp was the applicant here. When we came to you, we asked for $150,000 up to $150,000, $100 for the workforce recruitment and $50,000 for marketing. As you'll recall, when we were here, it was a real fast timeline, and they wanted applications, but they hadn't created all the administrative rules yet. Those followed within a few days and said no community can ask for more than $100,000. So we weren't going to need $150,000. That was some good news. The Development Corporation was part of a consortium, and that consortium got together. It's about 13 communities, I think, and said, well, let's do the marketing ourselves. We have the money for that, and do it for all our communities and let the communities put in for the actual direct incentive. So that's what happened. We put in an application for $95,000, so we don't have to match the marketing, but it did go against the amount we could ask for. So in essence, the award of $95,000 was 100% of what we asked for, which was not what we expected. So that was good news. And now that will go in a till with our matching money, that grant money, and then individual employees to put out some incentives. So it's getting a lot of coverage, and we'll see what the fruits of the labor pay out for that. But I think it's a good thing, and that's all I have.
Thank you, Joe. Anyone else got anything to contribute before we move to adjourn this meeting?
Move to adjourn.
Can I get a second?
I'll second it.
The motion, Councilman Remley, second. Councilman Ronayne, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed, nay. We are adjourned. Thank you all very much.